All right, and fellas, we'll move on to the Pittsburgh Penguins now. And I don't have a lot to say about the Penguins other than the fact that Sidney Crosby is absolutely carrying this team. Like, they will go as far as he can take them. I know that a lot of the talk for the Hart is around guys like McKinnon and Kucherov, McDavid certainly, but Crosby is going to get some love as well. Like, he has been unbelievable at his age. Father Time is undefeated, as we know, as we've seen with another future Hall of Famer in this division who we'll get to, but clearly it is not getting to 87. And it's been amazing to watch. But Pittsburgh hanging around it, fifth in this division, 51 points, tied with New Jersey and Washington, as we mentioned, and a point behind the Islanders for fourth, 4-3-3 in their last 10. What do we have to say about the Pens?
This team, I think it's well known that they've been unlucky this year. And so I'm not going to sit here and harp on that very much. What? Harp? What? But like, they've played pretty well defensively. They've gotten excellent goaltending up and down from the tandem here. And the puck is just not going in the net. It's unfortunate. Their shooting percentage has been just atrocious all year, fifth last in the league. And the expected goals are there, but it's just not coming. They're getting the scoring from the top end, like we always expect from this team, but it continues to be depth that lacks and just luck. Honestly, that's where I'm at with this team. I still think that they could be the 4 spot in this division and in a playoff spot potentially here, but I think we were pretty close with this team.
I think we were pretty close too. And like you said, Case, we expect this team to get better as the season goes on because, like you mentioned, they've been unlucky. And the stat that tells me that is they have the second fewest goals for above expected of a -30. They should have 30 more goals on the season.
But here's my question.
Yes.
Here's what I started to think about. Is it luck?
I'm glad you're going here. I'm glad you
can
are.
say it's unlucky when your PDO is bad and when your goals against is way below, or goals for above expected is way below. But last year, they finished last in the league at -36, and they're -30 at this point in the season. So Is it luck, or is there just a serious lack of finishing talent on this team?
Okay, I'm glad you brought it there because that's exactly what I was going to say. Last year, they finished second last, and a ton of, and I guess it probably depends what model you're using anyways. But this is a team last year who we continuously said, like, they're unlucky. They're going to get better. They're going to get better. And then they missed the playoffs. And that's when Harper said in, our preseason episode, he said, there's going to be a pissed off Sidney Crosby this year because they missed, and he's going to go on a tear. And we have seen that. He was great last year. He's just as good this year. The top end guys, there's never been an issue with them. And that includes like guys like Letang and Erik Karlsson too. Like, they have both been really good on top of, Malkin has been pretty good and Rust has been good when he's in the lineup. Gensel has been incredible, but it is the depth scoring. The reason I think that this year it could come down to luck more than it did last year is because I think they're better built this year. I feel like they have guys who have traditionally put the puck in the net. Like, looking back at last year's team, who else did you really have? Like, they added Riley Smith this year. I know he's not a guy who is, expected to go out and be a point per game, but that's added depth scoring. Rickard Rakell, I don't really know exactly what he is anymore, but that's another guy who, all he's done his entire career is score like 50 to 60 points. And, we're just not really seeing that much from him this year. So it's one of those things. I think this team has been unlucky. All of the underlying numbers for this team are really good, except for the goals for. So something has to give. They're even getting really good goaltending this year. I just feel like I'm going crazy because I've been saying the same things about this team for the last 2 full seasons. So we'll see. But if I trust the numbers, and I usually do, or at least some contextualized version of these numbers, then I think that they will be a playoff team when it's all said and done, or at least a bubble playoff team, or in the race, which they very much still are. They've only played 46 games, and that's the lowest of all of the teams basically surrounding them. Like, they have some ground to make up, but if I'm looking at the numbers, looking at the personnel and everything going into this team, I think they're going to figure it out and be about fourth best, which is where we predicted them, which is why we have them in the spot on category. I know that was long-winded, but sorry, Harp, you can jump in.
No, that was great from the both of you. And look, I do see Pittsburgh figuring it out and being a playoff team because of 87. I said it before the season started. He was pissed off at the end of last year. A loss to the Chicago Blackhawks, guys, prevented this team from being in the playoffs. Who would have thought? So, you take all of that into account, and the season that Sid is having, I mean, he will take them as far as he can go. The other thing that we haven't really mentioned, with all the stars and all of the future Hall of Famers on this team, that power play has been absolutely atrocious this year. I don't understand it, like, with everybody. And yes, bringing in a player of Erik Karlsson's caliber is great, but I think that it kind of threw things off. Like, you've had the same power play quarterback for, the last 10 years in Chris Letang, and then you add a guy like Erik Karlsson who can do the same thing, just as well, if not better. And I just think, there are other factors certainly, but I just can't get over how terrible this power play has been. There have been some pleasant surprises. Alex Nedeljkovic is one of them. I think we kind of looked at that signing from Kyle Dubas as kind of a nothing signing. Like, Nedeljkovic had a tough couple of years, and again, going back to Carolina, clearly they made the right choice moving on from him, but he's had a bit of a resurgence with Pittsburgh. So him and Jarry have been pretty good. Again, Jarry, that extension was a bit of a gamble, and we'll see how well that ages in Pittsburgh. But again, I go back to another point I think I made coming into the season, and the bottom six was a problem for this team last year, and I don't think it got much better. Like, I'm sorry, like, there are some good players in this bottom six, but they're just not the same. They're not the guys that they used to be. Lars Eller is not what he used to be. And I mean, congrats to him on reaching 1,000 games, but he's just not the player that he was in Washington anymore. Noel Acciari, again, good player, but I think $2 million is a little bit rich for him. And, again, other than a guy who can crash and bang a little bit, don't know how much offense is left in the tank from a guy like that anymore. Harkins, Colin White, O'Connor, these guys, like, again, not really expecting that much from them. And we'll see what happens with Jake Guentzel as well. They're going to have to see where they are at the deadline and make a decision there. Maybe you decide to move on from a guy like Guentzel and maybe get a couple of players that can come in and who are a little bit younger and play right away, i.e. maybe a deal with the Vancouver Canucks, and you bring in a couple of young guys in a trade that can help you out right away and just give you a little bit more depth. But at the end of the day, I think that this team will be a playoff team because of one reason and one reason only, and that's 87.
It's rare that those hockey trades work out, but like, obviously we're seeing the Jets LA trade that was basically that. It was PLD for bodies who are good now, and it's been working out for them. So that, I could see it because you're not selling for picks.
No, exactly. So. And sure, like, could you get a pick? Like, you could get a second rounder maybe in a
for Guentzel
deal, but
you could get way more.
No, I know, but like, you get obviously more than that, but you get a pick or two in there and a couple of younger players who can help you out right now, because obviously you're not selling Guentzel away for picks and prospects. And that'll be interesting to see what they do with him, because he does need a new contract after this season. And I think, once everybody slows down or decides to hang him up, we know where this is going in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. He deserves respect, man. He is quietly one of the best producers around. Like he gets zero credit because obviously Crosby and Malkin, but he's been very, very good for a long time now. So he's going to get paid whether it's in Pittsburgh or somewhere else. The last thing I'll say on Pittsburgh is if this team starts to heat up and starts climbing up the ranks in this playoff race that they're in, the price for Chris Letang in fantasy goes up from a third to a second. So buy now. Buy now, everybody listening.
Not even worth a third.
That's my pitch anyway.